Greetings to you all. I'm Dr. P.D.Satya. You are all welcome to International Institute of Anthropological Applications. And as you all know, we are running a course on Ambedkar and the agenda for nation building. So in that prescribed sessions, we are going to have a third session on the caste-based mode of production and enforced poverty. So Ambedkar, Dr. B R.Ambedkar, the father of the Indian Constitution, and his ideas and observations and his insights and his applications about the nation building and also in the country like India, looking for insights and applications that will promise the solutions, sustainable solutions. So in that process, Dr. B R.Ambedkar is the great eminent personality from whom we should learn lessons and pay attention thoroughly to his insights. So today, I'm proud of having Professor P.D.Satya Kumar sir from the Department of Anthropology, Andhra University. He is going to deliver the lecture on caste-based Ambedkar's ideas on the caste-based mode of production and enforced poverty. So I request him to deliver his lecture. Thank you.
Dr. P.D.Satya and friends, welcome back to this third talk. We have had two talks earlier, and now we'll have another exposition of Ambedkar on entirely a kind of a subject which generally is not much talked about actually. It's about Ambedkar's economy, and his economics basically, they have a kind of a vigor, and he brought about the caste-based mode of production. Generally, world across actually, because of the Marxian thought, we are very familiar with the class mode of production actually. So class mode of production, in fact, now has been very thoroughly analyzed, and then asymmetrical modes of production, and then exploitation has been very widely discussed and has been thoroughly researched. But it was Ambedkar who brought out this caste mode of production as a form of economic organization and much more exploitative as compared to the class mode of production. And it not just creates a kind of a poverty, but this caste mode of production, it compels the majority of the population into enforced poverty. This is one of the caption that Dr. Ambedkar has used, which has a lot of meaning behind actually. It has also had a structural kind of exposition. And today I'll try to discuss these issues. May not be that elaborately because economics is a very vast area, and Ambedkar himself being in fact a trained economist, there are much to in fact discuss on several facets of economics that Ambedkar touched upon. But the point is, with his vast erudition and analytical brilliance, Ambedkar in fact had the capacity to look at the issues and problems that are plaguing the society, and he could dig out the solutions in fact to these problems. He could dig out the roots of those oppressions. And added to that, he's not just in fact a kind of an analyst or a kind of a researcher. Ambedkar in fact in a man of great courage. With his courage of conviction, he attacked the social evils at a time when the objective conditions of the Indian society were not conducive at all, nor progressive enough to accommodate these revolutionary ideals. But he was some sort of, in fact, a daredevil, where he called a spade quite openly, not just in fact now with some sort of a malaise, but with a great commitment to establish a just society. So especially in fact now his exposition of the deleterious consequences of the caste system, uh, and his strident, same time in fact now justified criticism, shows his great commitment actually. So friends, we will get into this topic actually. For the first time, we can see Ambedkar bringing out a social cultural theory of economics of a Indian society. As a trained economist, we all pretty well know that Ambedkar has two PhDs from highly illustrious universities in the world. One is a PhD from Columbia University and another PhD from London School of Economics. And both PhDs, friends, of course, are in the field of economics, but within economics, the subdiscipline basically it's called as public finance. Many of the say students of economics, they find public finance is one of the tough subjects. But Ambedkar, in fact, no, could master in those two, and his thesis basically evolution of provincial currency in India, and another kind of work on the problem of rupee, and then his very incisive criticism on the say colonial kind of economics that started looting the several different countries by the colonized states. So these his thesis, in fact, no, both the thesis and also his master's dissertations, they have become kind of a study material for many of the say economists of the time, and especially like in a sense when the Cripps Commission came into India, and there are other commissions, in fact, now to deal with the economics of India and all, they always used to carry his papers and his books, actually published books. Such was his influence, actually, both on the people who are interested in his readings and also on the people on whom he was very critical about. And we pretty well know that Ambedkar's ideas, in fact, have become very crucial in the formation of Reserve Bank of India, because how the exchange of currencies, he talked about, in fact, no, the gold standard, the silver standard, the double standard. So all these exchange of currencies, which was his thesis, in fact, no, as a DSc thesis in London School of Economics, that formed the foundation of a Reserve Bank of India. And Ambedkar's, like in a sense, brush with different aspects of economy and economics of this country as law minister in the Viceroy Council, 1942-44, where in fact he brought in several labor reforms, and then he was also instrumental in supervising several dams and then hydroelectric projects, actually Hirakud, and also in fact now Son River Valley. And very few people they know that Ambedkar was instrumental in forming in fact no, the policy of power grid in this country, like in the hydroelectric projects and all, the generation of the personal electricity, and then in fact now storing it and then supplying it. So he was instrumental in forming that power grid policy, and he was also writing about, in fact, now utilization of water resources in this country. That's something called as Water Commission. He was member of the Indian Water Commission, in fact, initially for two consecutive say years. So having said that, what we are today looking at, in fact, now is not about all the facets of economics, but we will limit ourselves only to the economics, in fact, now of caste. So, as I have already mentioned, he brought out a social cultural theory of economics, and he had a thorough grasp of both theoretical and also concrete economic, in fact, now like implementation things in this that happens in this country. Of course, some of his thesis, of course, like all his thesis, they relate to the pre-independence kind of a times. He was writing those things on that time, but and yet they are highly contemporaneous in nature, fresh, in fact, no, like in the sense in their say dissection, and they have lucidity and depth of understanding. And many of his ideas, they're like very much relevant even this neoliberalization situation as well. We will look into those aspects, friend. So Ambedkar, probably, friends, is the first thinker. He is the first thinker who has formulated a social theory of exploitation. Generally, like in a sense, exploitation is seen in terms of economic terms. But he said a social structure, in fact, now has become a kind of an economic exploitative kind of a engine. So he said caste system is the structural model of exploitation. So that is what he has been thoroughly explaining, and he was the first in doing so, because many other students of Indian society before Ambedkar and even after Ambedkar, they were looking and then considering caste as a kind of a social organization. And at the most, in fact, no, some of them, they looked at caste as a kind of a social aberration or some sort of a religious imposition where there is a kind of a graded inequality. But no one before Dr. Ambedkar have ever brought out the exploitative economic dimension of caste. So that was his brilliance, actually. And he was among the forerunners who analyzed impact of social, cultural, religious discrimination on the economic well-being of the people of this country. So he very openly says, in fact, in his very first exposition, that was in 1916, we talked about caste in India, where he says that the impact of caste system is more economic rather than religious. He says that economic aspects, in fact, economic consequences of the caste are more prominent than the religious aspects. So that was the kind of a importance that he has been putting on the analysis of economics, and he has completely, in fact, disrobed the kind of a religion, the diabolical religious contrivance, which has created this kind of a slavery through this system of caste. So he says that the principle behind the caste system is from each according to his need, to each according to his nobility. That's what, in fact, Ambedkar says. Generally, if we look at any kind of an economic behavior in any kind of in any society in the world, what we find is from each according to the need, that is used to the principle. For example, like in a sense, if somebody is, in fact, is charitable and is trying to give something to the society after a calamity, suppose there is a calamity, and post calamity, a person, in fact, now wants to give some charity to the people. So generally, what is say relevant over there is the person would offer much more to the people who lost more, actually. People who need more, actually, who are deprived more, naturally would be the attention of the person who is trying to say give away the charity. But generally, they will not give it to the people who have not lost much. A rich will not be the first candidate to receive. But Baba Ambedkar actually clearly shows that caste system is not, in fact, a kind of thing that delivers to the needy, but it delivers to the people according to their nobility. According to their nobility means the higher the caste, the more returns, in fact, the beneficial returns they get from the caste system. And the lower the caste, they get, in fact, nothing. They were enforced into a kind of a misery. So this is a very, very, what you call, in fact, a paradoxical principle that Ambedkar has dug out in the caste system, an exploitative economic, in fact, consequence of the caste system. And he says that this social system and this order does not recognize equal need, equal work, or equal ability as the basis for reward of labor, actually. See, if two people work in the same way, they don't get paid, they don't get given as same kind of a credence or, in fact, respect. So caste system, basically, like in a sense, it recognizes people inequally. It doesn't give them, in fact, recognize the ability equally. Even in a situation where if two people from two different castes have the similar ability, the system or the psychology doesn't recognize those kinds of abilities which are similar, but They look at a dissimilar kind of a consideration. So therefore, this system, in fact, now, my dear friends, as Dr. Ambedkar has first time showed, it creates two types of castes. It creates productive castes at the lower, in fact, now, rungs of the system, the Shudras, Ati Shudras, all those people who are, say, branded as lower, all of them, in fact, no, they are producer castes. They are the service castes. Or they are the, called as a labor caste. None of them, in fact, no, they simply relax. They simply do not, in fact, no, like in a sense, draw the resource from others. All of them are workers. They are working castes, basically, producer castes. And you have on the other side, on the relatively, in fact, no, so-called higher, there are castes which are called as leisure castes, or they are called as exploitative castes. They are leisure, and they also appropriate the labor from the producing caste. You find, in fact, in terms of economics, when we look at the caste system, it very clearly shows this kind of a distinction, which Ambedkar has shown, that there is no dignity of labor in the system of caste. He says that in other countries and other societies, the workers, in fact, now get some kind of a respect. There is a dignity of labor. When somebody works, in fact, now they show that dignity. But in this society, leaving about dignity, there is wholesale contempt for labor, actually. And the appropriation or looting, in fact, now has been glorified in the system. So this is a kind of quite a big paradox that we see in this exploitative, in fact, a model, structural model called as caste system in terms of Ambedkar. So therefore, he says that, like in a sense, this system, caste system, Ambedkar says that the person who has made the system, he comments that, in fact, no, that fellow is a perverted genius. He says that the system has been designed for kind of, in fact, no, like economic exploitation. And it is so designed that it requires a genius, but a perverted person to do such kind of a thing. How? The very manufacturing of the caste, he says that it allows this kind of what you call looting of the labor of the producing caste. See, if you look at the caste system, my dear friends, on the top side of the caste system, on the upper side of the caste system, which caste is superior and which caste is inferior, those distinctions are very clear. There is no kind of a what you call confusion over there. And we pretty well know, as I've told, we discussed in the previous sessions, that in the caste system, we have more than 6,000 castes out there. But no two castes are equal, actually. Almost all over there, in more than 5,500 to 6,000 castes, no two castes are equal. Every caste, when it compares with another caste, in relation to the other caste, they are either superior or inferior, but never equal. So such was the modality or the kind that it has been formulated. And the point is, the caste system, the superiority, inferiority, these relationships, they are very, very clear, crystal clear on the top. But as we go down the caste system, as we come back to the producing caste or service caste, these clarity with regard to who becomes superior, who is inferior, that is completely blurred. Blurred not as a practice, but it has been blurred as a deliberate design. Ambedkar's contention is that the design, in fact, now has deliberately blurred. It confuses people at the lower level, saying that, in fact, no, you cannot say whether a barber is superior to a dhobi or a dhobi is superior to a barber. They keep on fighting among themselves. Similarly, in fact, no, even among the other castes also, like in the sense, the artisan communities, they keep on fighting whether who is superior, who is inferior. We can't say whether a smith is superior or a carpenter is superior. So if you go down, actually, even among the, say, Ati Shudras, called as untouchables, see, there are 1,236 scheduled castes are there in this country. No two castes are equal. But nobody, in fact, no, gives you that kind of a clarity as to which caste is superior and which caste is inferior. No Shastra, no Vedas, no Smritis, no Upanishads, or even, in fact, no epics or whatever, like in the sense, they say so-called quote-unquote sacred literature, gives that kind of a clarity. That means it is a deliberate design to keep these things blurred. And the point is, Ambedkar says that all these are producing castes, labor castes, day in and day out they work. And whenever they get leisure time, they keep on fighting among themselves with each other, trying to decide who is superior and who is inferior, making a clear way for the appropriating caste or the so-called upper caste to draw their, in fact, now like in the sense labor, to appropriate their labor, to loot their labor. So therefore, Ambedkar says it is a structural model of exploitation. Caste system is a perfect structural model of such kind of a exploitation. So therefore, he says that, he explicitly said that the caste system is thrice stands condemned. It thrice stands condemned. As a productive system, it stands discredited because production is discredited actually. And as a scheme of distribution, it causes deprivation to the majority. It causes deprivation particularly to the laboring class, particularly to the producers, particularly to those people who create fortunes in this country actually. So as a scheme of distribution, it in fact causes deprivation. And as a form of organization, if at all you call caste as a kind of a social organization, it is unable to form unity. Any kind of social organization has to necessarily, like in a sense, lead to a kind of a consciousness of kind. But caste, my dear friends, it is unable to form unity. So therefore, Ambedkar says the whole caste system structurally has become a perfect model of economic exploitation. And he was the first social scientist or even the first economist to bring out this particular important dimension of caste as an exploitation of the caste system. And he says, that's why he says, the primacy is on the economic exploitation rather than the religious kind of a dictate. So that's why he says caste system is more economic than religious. So now, having said that, it's a kind of a religious kind of, like in a sense, background. And we see, and Ambedkar, in fact, now takes a lot of efforts to show that religion as the engine of oppression of the majority people of this society, caste society. Why? Because in this only in this society, basically, the production and labor, both of them are consecrated by religion. We will not find anywhere in the world such kind of a relationship actually. So caste-based, in the caste-based mode of production, you will find the production and labor relations are connected through religion. That's why Ambedkar says, I quote, Hindus are the only people in the world whose economic order, that is the relation of workman to workman, is consecrated by the religion and made sacred, eternal, and inviolate, unquote. He says that, in fact, like in a sense, all these, see, production relations, and also, in fact, the other kinds of distribution, all these things, in fact, are being brushed, thoroughly founded by the background of religion. And he says they are made sacred, eternal, and inviolate actually. You cannot breach those things because it has been connected by the religion. So therefore, as a kind of a religious prescription, if you look into the Smriti, we see that there is a Smriti called as Manusmriti. It is called as Manu Dharma also, but rather it should be properly called as Manu Adharma, because there is no dharma over there actually. But if you look at the Manu Smriti, it has twofold significance. One is the spiritual as well as the economic. If you look into the spiritual aspect, actually, my dear friends, we know it says that, in fact, now the Shudras have been born out of whatever, like in the sense, the myth that says they are born out of the thighs or the feet. So therefore, or they are born out of the feet actually, and therefore they are looked down upon as the low because of the divine kind of a order. So which itself, in fact, now can be called as a spiritual fascism, because the gods themselves, in fact, now declare that they have created the people unequally, and therefore those people who are, in fact, relegated to the lower lungs, have to be, in fact, no, the serfs of the society. So therefore, it says that the Shudra is a slave and must serve, not for himself, but to the others, basically. So therefore, he has got what you call a duty to serve others. And therefore, like in the psychological aspects, as we have seen in the second talk, these people, they feel psychologically that right to serve is their kind of a right, actually. So, okay, fine, he serves. But those people who, in fact, no, like in the sense, deliver some kind of a services, they get returns. So what kind of returns that this caste mode of, in fact, no, service gives you? Manusmriti clearly says that in the economic prose, he must not strive for economic independence. These people are destined to be the servants. These people are destined to serve the other people. Never they should strive for economic independence or economic freedom. He must forever remain economically dependent on others, basically. So this is a kind of an religiously, in fact, no, economic imposition on the majority of the lower castes of this country. See, the point is, people who work, they have to work, and what they get, they don't, in fact, no, get what appropriately that is required to be given to them. The payment, of course, we'll see. That is what, in fact, Ambedkar calls it as enforced poverty. I think so. Sometime before, I talked about the distinction between poverty and backwardness in this country, in this society, because Ambedkar, only the economist who makes a distinction between these two. Poverty, as we know, basically is economic, and it is temporary. As we have seen, backwardness is not temporary; it is systemic, and it is in fact no, created not just by in economic terms, but by a combination of, in fact, no, aspects in the society. It is social, religious, political, economic, and all other, in fact, no, like in the sense, phases that fuse together to form that backwardness, actually. But here Ambedkar says the enforced poverty of the caste system, it is decided where, depending upon the locale of a particular caste. If a particular caste, in fact, no, is in the lower rungs, obviously they shall not accumulate wealth. That's what, in fact, Manusmriti also says. The Shudra must not accumulate wealth. But what should the Shudra get? He says the Shudra must serve. And what kind of a returns that he gets? So if you look into this caste mode of production, and then the kind of returns that the workers they get, the Manu's loss of wages. Manu has his own loss of wages, actually. He prescribes the loss of wage, the wage law, actually. He says that the master shall decide how much should be paid to the Shudra servant, depending on the size of the family and depending on his own resources to pay. And the master, in fact, no, if he cannot give anything, he can feed in terms of food, and he can offer leftovers also to the Shudra. See, like in the sense, the Manu's loss of wages, basically, they're not minimum loss. In the what you see in independent India, are the minimum law act was there. We talk about minimum wages. That means they're minimum to be paid, not the maximum. But here in Manusmriti, the Manu loss of wages, we see the maximum wage, not the minimum. The maximum wages are prescribed, and those wages, in fact, no, are left to the choice and to the magnanimity of the the master, and the slave cannot and should not make any demands on that, basically. So therefore, for friends, so there is no way that they look for, in fact, now a kind of a better, this thing, economic independence, economic well-being. There is still no way that they look for economic security. See, even if the master pays him very, very less, frugal, and they cannot talk about the security. They simply have to serve, that's all. They shall not raise their head and demand for certain things because of a religious condition. I'll come back to that point, actually. So therefore, if sometimes, even in these days, if the Shudras or Ati Shudras, they try to accumulate wealth, if they become more wealthy, if they become, in fact, economically highly progressive, then if you look into the intercaste conflicts, basically, generally abuses, then of course atrocities. At the same time, these intercaste conflicts, in fact, now also go along with an intention to destroy the properties and the resources of the lower caste. Probably, I think so, friends, that is what we have seen in Amalapuram. Vishwarup is a minister. Vishwarup, in fact, other MLA was, they're in fact now, like in the sense, politically successful. And they have amassed some kind of this thing. They have got houses, in fact, now in Amalapuram. The point is, those people who were, like in the sense, criticizing him, they're going against him. They have made a very deliberate plan to destroy the wealth. I'm not just talking about Amalapuram case. It is not the first, and it has not been the last, actually. In many occasions, you will see the properties, the houses are razed, the properties, in fact, now are damaged. Even, in fact, now, I think so, last month we have an occasion of incident where in Jaipur, Rajasthan, where a bank manager, he has got some kind of his brother is in US, and they have got good wealth. He belongs to the scheduled caste, and he has brought a Mercedes-Benz car. So a Mercedes-Benz definitely, in fact, now, like in the sense, is a very, very valuable position. And not the bank manager, but his son, a very young son. This young son, in fact, now started driving the Mercedes-Benz, and he was trying to show off in the roads. And you know what happened? A gang of Thakurs, who are called as, in fact, now Rajputs over there, they stopped it. This fellow. There's a new car, branded, in fact, Mercedes-Benz. It shows a lot of, in fact, accumulation of wealth, very high prestige. They looked into and then asked who is owner. And this boy came up and they asked him, who are you? I'm so-and-so, my father is like a manager. And they came to know, because in North India, you don't have to ask the caste. You just have to, in fact, know by their very name, in fact, know the suffix, it tells you about the caste. These people, they immediately came to know that he was a scheduled caste. And they grew very wild, saying that how the hell, bloody fellows, you amass such wealth, and then you try to show us. So what they have done? They damaged the car, bet this fellow, and they told him a lesson, saying that never ever try to show off before us. You never try to flaunt your, in fact, economic resources before us. You live as you are supposed to. So therefore, friends, see, this is basically the code of Manu, which is being followed even today at the level of the psychology. People must have not read Manu Dharma, Manu Adharma. Nobody must have, but they have been trained, actually. So that's what I'm saying. Even the penal actions against the caste strategies, they still continue in the intercaste conflicts, in fact, going against any kind of, in fact, amassing of accumulation of wealth for the lower caste. And of course, the religion, in fact, prescribes. The religion prescribes the kind of an economic situation of this society, says that the Shudras, Arthi Shudras, they have no choice of avocation. They can't decide their occupation. It has been destined, actually. And no economic independence. You cannot be free. If you are free, then you won't serve us, basically. So therefore, in order to keep these people under surveillance position, wealth, economic independence has not been allowed, actually. And the third is no economic security. So economically, the Shudra is a precarious being all along, in fact, in the caste system. And talk about untouchability. Untouchables are the source of, in fact, forceful agricultural labor, and caste system made them as statutory beggars of the society. Ambedkar says, in prosperity, they are the last one to be employed. And in depression, they are first to be fired. So they're the vagaries of this kind of an economic misery, actually. So friends, so this being the system and also the religion which sanctifies this kind of an oppression, Ambedkar comes to another dimension of, in fact, the caste mode of production. He says that in the caste system, The caste is not just a division of labor, but it is strangely a division of laborers. So he goes, in fact, now as a what do you call, like in the sense of highly skilled, skilled economist. He brings out this important facet for the first time, saying that caste system is not division of labor, but because this proposition has been brought out by many of the other anthropologists and sociologists, like we have Nesfield, who says that caste system is a division of labor. And there are other people, in fact, no, like I have many others who say that it is a kind of a division of labor, but unfortunately got consolidated, crystallized. So all these things have come. So as a retort, Dr. Ambedkar very clearly has shown that it is not division of labor, but it's a division of laborers. So what's the position actually? In a division of labor, friends, there is some sort of, in fact, no mutual willingness to share the work actually. That mutual willingness shows that there is no inequality out there. If suppose, maybe like in the sense of friends, if they join together, maybe from different kind of a social backgrounds, if they have embarked upon one single job, one single kind of a thing to do, probably they'll share. One will, in fact, do one kind of a job, another will do other. In fact, one person would volunteer to cook for these people while they are working. So there will be kind of a distribution of work. We will not find, in fact, no any kind of a compulsion over there. There is a kind of a voluntary kind of willingness. Second, there is no inequality over there. But my dear friends, in division of laborers, you will not find such kind of a what do you call feeling of what do you call voluntariness, or in fact, no, like a feeling of equality among these people. And Ambedkar says, I quote, in no civilized society is division of labor is accompanied by an unnatural division of laborers into watertight compartments, unquote. So he says that you will not find such kind of a economic dimension anywhere in the world. It is unnatural division of people into watertight compartments. And he says that here, of course, laborers are divided, but another dimension also is that there is no place or respect for individual in the caste society. See, an individual, in fact, no, may be highly efficient, may be highly, in fact, no, skillful, may be highly brilliant, but it does not matter in a caste society. It is always the group to which the individual belongs that, in fact, no, decides the position or the respect or, in fact, no, the avocation that the person has to indulge in. So there is no place for individual choice of occupation. One cannot decide that I am interested in this particular thing. By not allowing readjustment of occupations, caste becomes a direct cause of unemployment. Ambedkar also says this particular thing. If some people are not allowed to, in fact, adjust their avocations, suppose for that matter, in fact, it leads to unemployment, like in the sense. If suppose barbers are not allowed to, in fact, do anything other than doing shaving and all, now that in the change in society, when you have got razors and blades and all other things and all, barbers have become, in fact, now irrelevant. Now that barbers have to look for other thing, but no matter what it does, they're still called as barbers. They're looked upon with the same kind of a situation. I have also seen in my own university, like in a sense, my colleagues, they're professors, but they're, in fact, no, at their back, they are identified as this professor, a barber professor, a Adobe professor, or a scavenging professor, or in fact, no, a kind of a professor, in fact, from a. So the kind of a tag, it still goes on. The cultural tag goes on along with the compulsory hereditary occupation. Doesn't leave actually. So therefore, there is no individual choice of occupation. Even if you, in fact, discontinue the occupation, that identity doesn't, in fact, like leave you. It doesn't leave you basically. So therefore, as an economic organization, Ambedkar says caste divides laborers on the scale of gradation, hierarchy, and in fact, now like kind of a disposition. So there is division of laborers actually, not simply labor. Division of laborers always goes in the line of hierarchy actually. graded inequality. So he also says caste dissociates work from interest, basically. If somebody is interested in doing some job, there is no choice for that avocation. Whether you like it or not, it imposes that work on you because you are predestined actually to take up the same task. But if a person is very good in mathematics, and if he in fact is born in a kind of a weaving community, no, he is not allowed to take up his own preference. He must take up the same kind of an occupation in which he has been born. So therefore, it disconnects work from interest. Caste also disconnects intelligence from labor. This is a very, very, in fact, like in the sense, uneconomic kind of a proposition. If the people who are working, if the producing castes, if the producing castes are given skills, given education, they definitely, in fact, become much more, prudent in their skills. They become much more productive, actually. But unfortunately, in this particular society, the intellect is disassociated from, in fact, the kind of work that you do, from the labor that you do. The producing castes are not given education. The majority producing castes in this country, they are barred from literacy, barred from education, barred from acquiring, in fact, knowledge and become intelligent. So this is one important uneconomic imposition, in fact, on the majority people, majority producing castes, where in spite of the fact that they do service, in spite of the fact that they are artisans, in spite of the fact that, in fact, they have got scientific, in fact, knowledge, that is not allowed to, in fact, shine. That is not allowed to, in fact, move into or graded into a kind of a finesse. So therefore, these people, they remain unskilled. Whatever skill that they get, the crude skills that they get, they continue to do the same thing. So caste disconnects intelligence from labor, and caste devitalizes by denying the worker the right to cultivate vital interests. Yeah, no choice, in fact, not to get. And caste prevents mobilization for either for offense or defense. It prevents, in fact, no kind of a unity and consciousness. And that is the, what you call, in fact, no sad plight of India. When caste system, in fact, no designated only this particular caste can become the rulers. Rest of the castes, in fact, no have no role in either in the politics or even any kind of things at all. That is the reason why anybody outside who came to India, who tried to take a campaign of invasion on India, it was all the time, in fact, very easy for them to conquer all the say areas. That's what Ifran Habib says. When foreign soldiers, in fact, marching in the fields to take on their king, the lot of the, in fact, workers, they have been simply continuing the work in their agricultural fields because they do not have any relationship with the king. No matter, in fact, who rules, this is their job to do. They have no interest. They are not conscious enough either for offense or defense. So therefore, Ambedkar says, as an economic organization, in fact, caste does these things, and it really affects the choice, interest, intellect, and also the unity of the workers, in fact, in this particular caste-based mode of production. So therefore, efficacy levels, they go low, actually. And that's the reason why Ambedkar comments, I quote, he asks, what efficiency can there be in a system? What efficiency can there be in a system under which neither man's heart nor their minds are at work, actually? Because the person who continues his traditional hereditary occupation, if he is not interested in that, he will not place his heart in that particular work, or his mind in that, actually. He is not interested. Second thing is, in fact, no, he is not in a position to do that, but still he was compelled to do that. So therefore, that directly, in fact, now spells on the efficacy of his work. So therefore, Ambedkar says, caste mode of production, it creates inefficiency, and it also creates low productivity, actually. So that's another dimension that we have seen, my dear friends. So far, in fact, what we have seen so far, in fact, is that I'll just try to say that, because Dr. Ambedkar for the first time has shown that caste is a model, structural model of exploitation. And he has shown, in fact, no, there is a structural, say, construction where the lower caste, in fact, no, they take up labor, and then upper caste, so-called upper caste, in fact, no, they loot the labor. And in this particular mode of production, there is no dignity for labor, and there is as well contempt for labor. Actually, appropriation is being respected. Actually, so therefore we'll see uh, if this particular system has been stagnated, it has been continuing. Even to continue, in fact, no, there should be a lot of impositions, because change is the kind of a change is eternal. It always happens. But caste society, caste mode of production, it in fact no like does not allow that change. Change is the essence of the process of economic development. See, what we see in the world over in different societies, the economic aspects have been changed basically. So with the change, necessities in fact now brought down different kind of efficacies. But that's the reason why we say change is the process of economic development. But the caste system, on the other hand, it advocates perpetuation of the same socio-economic pattern, which is detrimental to the economic progress. That's what we see actually. And moreover, Ambedkar calls this particular kind of a system, this economic system, as the gospel of slavery. He says that it's a gospel of slavery. And then he goes on to compare the system of slavery with untouchability. So he says that this is worse than slavery actually, where he is, there's a huge, in fact, no amount of comparison that he has done. And he says that slavery was never obligatory. It was always forced upon. Whoever, in fact, now is taken as slave, he has been very forcefully taken, and a slave never accepts as a kind of a obligation to become a slave. A slave always has been forced upon, right? Captured, forced upon to become, in fact, no slave. But untouchability is obligatory. It says that because you are born as an untouchable, this is what you are supposed to do. We have not done that, but it has been, in fact, no, the kind of a divine sanction. Untouchable has no option. He is destined by the birth. And in the slavery, the system of slavery, my dear friends, the master, when he buys a slave, the master has to ensure the necessities of food, shelter, health, and also the skills of the slave. Because he has to, in fact, when he brought a slave, he has to get work from the slave. In order to get work from the slave, because he has bought him, the slave has to be given food, whatever, like in a sense, meager food. Providing food, in fact, now is the responsibility of the master. And the master takes care when he is sick. Master provides him the shelter, cloth, minimal cloth, whatever. And the master also gets him skilled, so because he gets better work. But all these things, in fact, now all these responsibilities are not there in the caste, in fact, no masters. The masters in the caste system, they never bother to feed, in fact, no, their untouchable slaves. They were never bother whether they are living in a protected, as in fact, no, a house or not. They don't care. They never bother if someone is sick. If an untouchable sick, he says, the bloody, it is your own making. So at the same time, he never imparts skills to the untouchable, because if he gets skilled, then he will, in fact, move away. So therefore, comparing these kind of these situations, Ambedkar says this is much more worse than slavery. And the law of slavery permits emancipation. A slave can become conscious and can rally for freedom. That is what happened world over. Slaves, in fact, no, they became conscious of their slavery and they fought for their kind of freedom. Slaves fought right from, in fact, Roman slavery, like Spartacus, who led this slavery, this thing. And then you see Afro-Americans, you see Hispanics, you see the Mexicans, all across the world. Like in a sense, the slaves, they started fighting for their freedom. So there is a kind of, in fact, an urge or a possibility when the slaves become conscious, they can rally for their freedom. But in the caste system, in fact, the productive caste, the producing caste, they become wanton and willful vassals. That means they feel that they are destined to serve. They have become wanton and willful vassals. They have become willful slaves. And that is what, in fact, now why Ambedkar says the system of caste slavery is worse than the slavery in elsewhere. So here, in fact, now why they become willful vassals? The theory of karma comes in here. They say that it is because of your past deeds. Bloody, if you become a untouchable right now, you must have been a very cruel person in the past birth. So therefore, the victim is blamed for his own victimhood. No one, in fact, no, the oppressor doesn't take responsibility for the oppression. The oppressor says that I have done something good in the past birth, in my past birth. That is the reason why I have become master. And you have become the slave. And the master is not allowed to show any mercy on the slave. Otherwise, if he shows any mercy on the lower caste, he becomes a bad master. And this bad master has a belief that in the next birth, he will become, in fact, a slave himself. So therefore, the caste system doesn't allow the rights of the workers. You cannot talk about rights. You cannot talk about minimum wages. You cannot talk about, in fact, say minimum amount of time that you should work. So caste system doesn't allow that actually. So he becomes his own slave, like in the sense a slave, in fact, now he has become a victim because of his own victimhood. So that is the kind of a situation that we see in the caste system. And coming back, my dear friends, see what we see, this kind of a system, caste system, in fact, now because India necessarily is an agro-based society, and Ambedkar turns to the agrarian problem of this society, and the caste judgment system and other kind of relationships of caste and economy, they keep on thriving actually in the villages. So therefore, Ambedkar, many people talk about judgment system. We know many people, in fact, studied judgment system, and they said it is a kind of an interdependence of services. They say that many castes, they offer their services and get things in return. They say that it is a kind of, in fact, interdependence, and it is a harmonious system. But Ambedkar very clearly says that it is the edifice of exploitative system. It is not interdependence. It is a compulsion of service, basically, that these people, they do. They are connected and then compulsorily taken their labor, and the returns are not fixed. As Manu Code says, the Manu laws of wages, it says, it shows only the wages are paid, the maximum wages are paid on the mercy of the master, not on the demands and assessment of the workers. There is no negotiation as such. So therefore, all your labor laws, other things do not work out there. So coming to the agrarian problem, in way back in 1918, Ambedkar basically brought out a seminal contribution. And he, on the theme of India's agrarian problem, he says that small holdings and their remedies. Time would not suffice for us to explain the whole big, that's a kind of a thesis by itself. But Ambedkar says that the problem in India is not, agricultural problem in India is not just the small holdings, but they are scattered holdings. He says that the size is not as uniform. Small is only relative, actually. And at the same time, some people say that it is because of the law of inheritance. The father divides the plots to his own children, and then so on and so forth, thus making Indian, in fact, size of the land holdings very, very smaller. Ambedkar says it is not just the law of inheritance, but it is the level of dependency on the labor, dependency on the land due to the pressure on land. Here he says that the population increase, gradual population increase, in fact, now it has created pressure on the land, and the majority of the people of this country are only dependent on these holdings, and therefore their dependency is on the agricultural lands. But the problem is these lands are small, scattered, and these small holdings cannot create a capital, cannot create, in fact, a kind of a good earnings on that. Thus, lower castes who are agricultural labor or small-time agriculturers, they continue to live in penury. They can't create a kind of any kind of a surplus or a kind of a so they are destined in this particular way into a kind of a misery and penury. They simply, in fact, now try to make both ends meet. So here, as a remedy, Ambedkar suggested the nationalization of land, and it wanted, in fact, no, the state to establish corporate farming, not capital intensive farming, or not, in fact, no, what do you call corporate farming, as we see these days in the neoliberal situation. What we see is that governments are supporting the agro business or corporate farming. But Ambedkar, in fact, no, as a socialist, he was saying he demanded for, in fact, no, a cooperative farming where people farm into cooperatives, take larger plots of land, work on it collectively, and so that they can create a surplus where they can become, in fact, no, better say economically positioned. But and for that, at the same time, as a remedy to relieve people from the dependency on of agricultural lands, he suggested, in fact, now what you call another thing is industrialization. Basically, he affirms that this is the only way to liberate lower caste from economic oppression in the caste society. So he says that is the only way. Then Ambedkar, in fact, now talks about takes up the issue of industrialization, where he says that, in fact, now many people talk about there is agricultural mechanization, which is creating surplus labor, which is creating unemployment with the agricultural labor. Therefore, they are becoming destitute without any job. So there, Ambedkar, in fact, now contradicts that kind of position. He says that, commenting on the mechanization and technology, Ambedkar says, the problem is not due to science and technology. I'm quoting Ambedkar. I quote, the problem is not due to science and technology, but with the wrong social organization, which had made private prosperity and pursuit of personal gain matters of absolute sanctity, unquote. He's saying that it is not technology, it's not mechanization, but those scientific, in fact, now, like in a sense, advancements, they are now couched in a wrong social organization called as caste system, actually. So there he says, on the aspect of mechanization of agriculture, basically I said, creating idle labor, he says, the competition is between idle labor and idle capital. Many, like in a sense, they say that if capital becomes idle, if it is not invested, that leads to some kind of a disastrous situations in the economy of the country. But Ambedkar says very clearly, idle labor is more calamitous than the idle capital. Why? As an astounded economist, he says that capital exists, but labor lives. Meaning, idle capital does not earn, it cannot make property, but it does not also consume much to keep itself. Your capital remains as it is. If it's not invested, it may not give you earn you the profits, but it remains as it is. But labor, whether earning or not, consumes to live. And it is a calamity, in fact, now if you keep this labor like that. So therefore, Ambedkar's answer lies in industrialization of the country, where industrialization or industries can act as sponges to take in the idle labor in non-agricultural channels of production. See, friends, on the economics, in fact, now of caste system, Ambedkar, in fact, now, as I said, nobody in India ever looked at caste system as an exploitative economic exploitative system. It was first Ambedkar, and he was the one who analyzed that caste mode of production, actually, which we are talking about. Now, friends, I will turn to the class mode of production as, say, postulated by Karl Marx, and then compare with Karl Marx and Ambedkar with regard to caste mode of production. Here I must say, my dear friends, I don't have to explain you much about class mode of production. Many of us, in fact, know very clearly aware there are classes, as Karl Marx postulated, the exploiting castes and the exploited castes, the master classes, the bourgeois, and the labor castes called as the proletariats. So there is a consciousness between the proletariat among themselves, and also, in fact, no, the bourgeois have consciousness, and the proletariat does not have any consciousness. The bourgeois had that class consciousness to exploit the labor, to exploit much from the labor, actually, and enhance their profits. And what Karl Marx basically said, the proletariat classes, the exploited classes must come together. They must join hands together, and in fact, no, they can fight on a kind of a revolution where they can free themselves from the shackles of exploitation. But here, when it comes to caste mode of production, Karl Marx also has had its ideas on caste mode of production. But unfortunately, the mischief played by the Indian Marxists, which has been very, very vehemently brought out by Dr. Ambedkar. Why? Because Ambedkar, as we have discussed much before, probably he is the first person in India to study Marxism and post-Marxian socialism way back in 1913 itself, where in India nobody has opened their eyes towards Marxist movement, Marxist struggle. Marxism has come to India only in 1922-23, after the October Revolution 1917 in the Soviet Union, actually. Lenin led that October Revolution. But Ambedkar, as a student in Columbia University, in his very first semester, 1913, he has completed a course on Marx and post-Marxian socialism. So he's very, very, in fact, now like conscious about Karl Marx and his exposition of class mode of production. But where Ambedkar, in fact, now talked about these aspects, unfortunately, Karl Marx also talked about these aspects in his lectures on Asiatic mode of production. But unfortunately, my dear friends, the Indian Marxists, they were never conscious about the caste. They said caste they did not never considered. They said caste is a type of class, and they never bothered about the Asiatic mode of production. And that's the reason why they are being thoroughly criticized recently. They are thoroughly criticized. In fact, no, these Indian Marxists have brought a strange form of spurious theorization of India, which missed the Marx's original contributions on his study of non-Western societies. Many people, they feel that Karl Marx's ideas about India are only limited between 1853 to 1861, when he was writing for the Paris Tribune papers or New York Tribune papers and all, occasional papers, where Karl Marx said the castes based on the religion in India are a great impediment for the revolution. That's what he said. And Karl Marx, in those papers, he was saying that colonialism, in fact, now is has an opportunity of breaking this caste, kind of a stagnation. That was his idea. That was the only thing popularized by the Indian Marxists. But very, very consciously, highly strategically, they have buried Karl Marx and his ideas on caste and then Asiatic mode of production. That is what has come out. Ambedkar, he worked with the Marxists, like Dange. S.A. Dange, he worked when he started in the Independent Labour Party. He worked with the Dange, and ultimately after his discussions and then his experiences, he said, Marxism, had it not been in the hands of few Brahmin boys like Dange, there would have been revolution in this country a long time ago. The Soviet Union, by placing revolution in the hands of these Brahmin boys, either do not want revolution or they are not aware of the society of India. That's what Ambedkar commented. Let us now see what Karl Marx, in fact, now has talked about very, very briefly. Karl Marx's later writings, in fact, now on the non-West societies have largely not been recognized by the established left in India. There is a professor of, in fact, now of economics. His name is Murjban Jal. In 2015, he wrote very, very, in fact, now very serious and highly critical essay in Economic and Political Weekly. He says that Asiatic / caste mode of production and the failure of the Indian Marxists. So there he says very clearly that the established left in India, the established left parties or left intellectuals in India, they are not aware or they have not recognized Karl Marx's writings on the non-Western societies. Of course, Theodore Shannon and Kevin Anderson, they brought of the later writings of Karl Marx into English, but Lawrence Crader in 1974 first came out with his with his, in fact, no, publication of Karl Marx ethnological notebooks. Karl Marx has written, in fact, no, a compilation called as ethnological notebooks. And in these ethnological notebooks, Karl Marx talked about the Asiatic mode of production. And he said the historical materialism might not flatly similarly work in the Asiatic societies because their mode of production is entirely different. And he says that in that particular thing, Karl Marx has a clear understanding of caste as a form of Asiatic mode of production. Marx's statement on the caste has been, I quote, the solid foundation of Oriental despotism based on a sort of equilibrium resting and resulting from a general repulsion and a constitutional exclusiveness resulting between all its members. This is exactly Ambedkar brought out. Isolation, mutual repulsion are the nature of the caste, psychological nature of the caste society, which Karl Marx was also writing. He was saying, I repeat, Karl Marx is saying, I quote, caste has been the solid foundation of Oriental despotism based on a sort of equilibrium resulting from a general repulsion and constitutional exclusiveness between all its members. And Karl Marx goes on saying that caste is also a form of estranged mind. Estranged mind means a kind of a mental, kind of a malaise. Estranged mind, and caste is both a neurosis as well as cretinism, unquote. It has brought out, in fact, now by Lawrence Crader's ethnological notebooks in 1982, actually. In page 129, you will see that Karl Marx, in fact, now trying to show that castes are mutually exclusive, fine. And he says that caste is the solid foundation of this Oriental despotism. 3, he says that caste is a form of estranged mind, which Dr. Ambedkar said caste is, in fact, is a psychology of mind, actually. And at the same time, Marx is saying caste is a neurosis. That means how many times you kill it, it springs up, in fact, and then looks at you at the face. You will see parallels. Ambedkar is also saying, you turn whichever side you turn, you will have to kill the demon of caste. You will have to face it and then kill the demon of caste, which, in fact, he says is a neurosis and also a cretinism. Cretinism means a kind of, in fact, a psychological frenzy that each caste tries to, in fact, create a kind of an opposition to the other caste to the extent where it wants to disturb, completely exterminate that particular caste, actually. So, therefore, caste is a structure of human alienation and a form of social exclusion. This is Karl Marx. Ambedkar says, in fact, in the similar way, it's an isolation and mutual exclusion. So the problem, my dear friends, later on, in fact, Murjiban Jal, he again, in fact, coaching says that Brahminism created the ideology of Indian spiritualization and the political economy of Brahmin overlordship by denouncing the artisans and producing castes of their scientific practices. Because all these producing castes are scientific. A weaver is highly scientific. A dhobi, in fact, well, he has invented, in fact, some kind of a chemicals to remove dirt from the cloth. They are scientists, organic scientists. The barber is an organic scientist. He knows what is an antiseptic. A cobbler who turns the skins into hides and then leather, they are scientists. All these people are organic scientists. But they were debarred from, in fact, knowledge so that they can make, in fact, much more scientific results. But the artisans, in fact, denouncing the artisans and producers, their scientific practices. This entrenched itself so much so that Brahminism as the dominant ideology, which, in fact, like in a sense, this particular position, Murjibal Jan says, it is similar to Karl Marx and also, in fact, more similar to Ambedkar when they are on the same page in talking about this. Again, coming to the caste mode of production, there is a kind of a revision with regard to Karl Marx structure and superstructure. We all know in a class-based mode of production, Marx has postulated economics as the base structure upon which the polity and the society are created. They are the superstructure, actually. But here, on the question of relation between polity and economy, Ambedkar had more complex understanding than Marx. He says that Marx, of course, when he talks about Asiatic mode of production, he also has come to this kind of a conclusion, as now it has come out actually from these papers, which have been thoroughly, in fact, now buried by the Indian Marxists actually. So Marx, writing on Asiatic mode of production, he says that, I quote, the fusion of economic base and the ideological and political superstructure is the peculiarity of the Asiatic state, unquote. You see the similarities. Marx says the fusion of economic base with the ideological, Brahmical ideological kind of a thing, and the political superstructure upon it is the peculiarity of the Asiatic state, more particularly about India. So here, Marx is revising his, in fact, now structure, superstructure with regard to Indian society. And Ambedkar, in fact, no, he went a little further. He postulated two superstructures upon the structure of society and culture. Ambedkar says society and culture, this is more important actually, and economy and polity are the superstructures. Of the two superstructures, Ambedkar gave greater weight to the economy than polity. He says economic, in fact, now is more important. Politics, in fact, now, like in a sense, liberal democratic politics is foreign to India, which has been later brought in. Finally, my dear friends, I come to the kind of a exhortation of Dr. Ambedkar, saying that Brahminism and capitalism are the twin enemies of Indian society. Where Brahminism being the ideology, capitalism, in fact, now is the kind of exploitative, labor exploitation. These two are the twin entwined enemies of Indian society. This is where Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, very clearly says caste mode of production brings together the economic exploitation as a matter of, in fact, no, like in a sense, mode of production, mode of exploited relations, consecrated by Brahminism, in fact, now as a kind of a religious sanction, a divine sanction, actually. So that is what he says. Even today, Brahminism and capitalism are the twin enemies of this society. I will just try to give you one or two simple examples. I can give you more examples, but for the paucity of the time, I will, in fact, now, like in a sense, limit to one or two simple. Economists, in fact, know, while calculating human development indices, HDI, they say that some of the states in this country are called as Bimaru states. We know Bimaru, B-I-M-A-R-U, saying that these states basically, what are these Bimaru states? Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and in fact, like in a sense, say Rajasthan, and parts of Jharkhand, of course, all these, in fact, now, Bihar, like Jharkhand, Bihar, UP also form Jharkhand, and also, in fact, no, the Chhattisgarh. So these are the areas, these are the states which are called as Bimaru. Bimari in Hindi is sick. But in human development indices, these kind of states, in fact, no, which we are talking about, they in fact, no, are in the lower side of it, all those human development indices. So generally what we see economists is that they say how much poverty is there. They also give us, in fact, no, what sort of poverty it is there in terms. But unfortunately, economists do not tell us who are poor and why they are poor. And if you make an assessment about these Bimaru states and the population that it has, what we come across is that compared to the total population of India, 56% of the scheduled tribes, they live in these Bimaru states. 52% of the scheduled castes live in these states. 51% of the OBCs, they live in these states only. That means the constitutional category of socially and educationally backward classes, those backward classes in more proportion, they live in these Bimaru states, which show lower human development indices. That means where these people, in fact, now the Shudras and Shudras in the Varna category, where they are more, they are poor. They have HDI in the less. That means either the governments are not in a position to, in fact, now honor their entitlements, or these people are unable to, in fact, like in a sense, realize their constitutional entitlements and rights. So that is one. And right now in India, what we see basically is a capitalist change. It has come. Capitalism, in fact, now has entered India. It has come along with the neurotic, unchanging character of caste. Capitalism in India, in fact, now has become a Brahminical capitalism, where certain of the exploiting castes, in fact, now have become rich, much richer, and the so-called, in fact, now lower castes, there is a drain of wealth from these particular people, the lower caste to the upper caste. I think so, like in the sense, I can show you kind of a stat. I think so. You can also do that. If you take the Oxfam India Inequality Report, right from 1991, that table shows you that just 10% of population in this country in 1991, when LPG, in fact, now is brought in 1991, the 10% population of this country, they control 53% of the resources in this country. And the same 10%, after 10 years, in 2021, they were controlling around 57% of the resources. There is a drain to themselves. And in 2001 to 2011, their control, the 10% population's control, rose to 64%. And in 2019, the same 10%, they are now controlling more than 74% of the population, resources of this country. 2021, in fact, now their control rose to 77%. That means just 10% of the population are controlling 77% resources of the country, and the remaining 90% of the population, they are controlling only 13% of the population resources of this country. So this is a skewed kind of thing. And if you look at who are these people, who are these 10%, or even who are these 1%, you will definitely find that these are the Brahminical castes, which in fact now, who have become traditionally appropriating castes. Traditionally, in fact, no, the exploiting and looting castes actually from the producing castes. So we can couch that very clearly. That's why capitalist change, it came along with the neurotic, unchanging character of the caste. And it continues even in the neoliberal India. So therefore, friends, the remedy that Ambedkar, of course, I talked about remedies Ambedkar talked about, but Ambedkar, in fact, no, he proposed state socialism and economic democracy as the kind of a remedies where the structures of the caste should be crumbled so that, in fact, no, there will be some sort of a liberation for the caste, what do you call, proletariat in this particular country. And he, of course, Ambedkar believed that state intervention is a must. But today, as we see, my dear friends, India turning out to be a flawed democracy where the governments, bounded by the constitution, by the democratic constitution, are in fact now given the responsibility and mandate to take care of the majority population of this country. But governments, in fact, now have now become either what do you call facilitators, or they have become brokers to the capitalist, in fact, now corporates of this country. So unfortunately, that did not work out. But in any case, like in a sense, when you come back to the caste mode of production, the Ambedkar's novel exposition as a first economist of this country who brought out this dimension, economic dimension, in fact, now the peculiar and highly exploitative economic model, in fact, now that India has, the caste structural model, in fact, now exploitation, the caste mode of production and its vagaries creating enforced poverty are very, very clearly, lucidly, and in fact, no, highly, like in a sense, intellectually brought out by Dr. Ambedkar, which no other social scientist has brought so far. So I end this talk over here, where we have talked about caste mode of production, understood a bit about about enforced poverty, which is still continuing alive and kicking in this society, where Ambedkar has said Brahminism and capitalism are the twin enemies of this particular society. And he also exhorted, saying that let not the tyranny has the freedom to enslave you. So therefore, it is the bounden duty of the citizens, in fact, and especially the producing, teeming millions of the population of this country, not to allow the tyrants to practice their tyranny. Thank you so much. Dr. Ataya, I've done actually.
Thank you, Professor Satyapal, for your excellent presentation on the caste mode of production and enforced poverty. And thank you for bringing the insights and the observations of Dr. B R.Ambedkar on Indian society, how majority of Indian population are enforced to suffer poverty due to the prevailing caste system and its brutal imposition of the sanctions in the name of divine or religious sanction, whatever that come along with the caste system. Now, dear friends, this is time for questions. So if you need any clarifications or you have any questions, you kindly pose questions to our speaker, Professor P.D.Satya Kumar, sir.
Hello.
Yes, we are able to hear you, sir.
Yeah, this is Dr. B R.Ambedkar. First of all, sir, good evening. Hello, Professor Satya, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I can hear you, but very, very feeble. Yeah.
Yeah. I am the member of our community. Yeah, dignity.
I can listen to beautiful songs for the melodies.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, actually, I am at my native place, at village.
I understand.
Not good. That's why. But successfully I had our lecture, but I am not able. You were not able to listen to my question because of lack of signal, good signal.
Yes,
but hello, sir.
Yes, sir. You are audible. Please continue.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Here, my question is that, as you told, state democracy or state socialism model, whatever proposed during 19.
Oh, unfortunately, we lost the signal.
Yeah. It got disconnected.
We'll wait, of course, but if any other participants have some kind of a, I think so. He's back.
Yes. Dr. B. N. Rao, sir, go ahead. Continue.
So, whatever state socialistic model or state democratic model, whichever proposed during 1950s, may be suitable to our Indian context. But in present days, during the neoliberal framework, every developing country trying to follow the liberalistic model, and which is very problematic to the nature of developing countries, particularly in India. Also, we are facing so much of difficulty by such strategy. But how the government forcibly they are following that kind of mechanism, and to escape from the responsibilities of government, slowly they are withdrawing, because constitutional promises also, it become easy to escape from the promises of constitution, like implementation of reservation and all these things. Okay, but how to insist the state at present scenario, how we can insist the government to implement or to follow the state socialistic paradigm? That's very much difficult. And here, whole world economies are transforming towards new liberal things. Now, how we can insist that one? Yeah. That's a big question to every developing country.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Can I respond?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So there are three statements, in fact, now here. Of course, Ambedkar has brought out his own ideas. In fact, socialist is like a pattern, but not in the form of a kind of a. He was talking about state socialism within the parliamentary democracy setup, because we also seen socialism taking up, in fact, different political formulations. But to Ambedkar's conviction, the best suitable method is state socialism within parliamentary democratic kind of a situation. Yeah, that is one. So the point is, like, in a sense, in India, then or even today, the entrenched castes, they never like democracy. They always want to keep up, in fact, no, their hegemony all through, whether like in the sense in the Manu Dharma, or even in fact no, whatever changes and all, whether it is 21st century or even 22nd century, the entrenched castes want to maintain their hegemony, their grip over the society or even the affairs of the state. And that is what they have been manipulating right from the the unfolding of democracy in this country. But here, Ambedkar, in fact, no, was very, very critical, very, very particular in bringing up democracy into this country. He was saying that, I think so, the third reading of the draft of the Constitution very clearly says, today we have one person, one vote. There is political democracy is there. But we need to make this one person, one vote into one person, one value. That's what he said. That one person, one value comes with social democracy and then economic democracy. And he was very particular, of course, as we all know, that Ambedkar said, social democracy and economic democracy are the tissue and fiber of any kind of a political democracy, without which a political democracy cannot survive. And that is what we see. And Ambedkar also, like in a sense, gave and wrote very extensively and intensively on the success of democracy in this country. He has given some 9 parameters without which in India democracy cannot succeed in a kind of a caste kind of a setup. And he gave, in fact, no, saying that there shall not be an absolute kind of a brute majority. He says that, in fact, no, opposition must be very active. He was talking about, in fact, no, constitutional morality by the people. Of course, I'm not going to enlist all those things over here, but he says he was very clear about the conditions contingent for a successful democracy in this country. He said very clearly, without these conditions, in fact, no, democracy would be a farce. That's what he also said. But, without social economic democracy, he said, we are building a castle on a dung heap. That's what he said. It will be a dung heap. So therefore, the foundations of democracy, basically, he said, must be found in creating democracy as a kind of a bloodless revolution that brings revolutionary changes in the economic and social life of the people. He talked at length about these things. Of course, I think so I will deal with those things when Ambedkar talked about, in fact, now, constitutional governance and democracy as a mode of associate life. I will deal with it. But the point is, sir, you have made a very clear this thing. Right from the independence, the forces that have been in the governance, they want to, in fact, now undo the constitution. They were not happy about it. They want to undo the constitution. All attempts, in fact, now have been there to manipulate. But very, very clear leeway was given to them in 1991 when India has, in fact, now accepted the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Before which there was nationalization. There was, in fact, now, like in the sense of state ownership of other things and all. Now it has become, in fact, now very easy for them to liberalize the policies, privatize all the public institutions and goods at a kind of a cheap rates to the corporates or the private parties too. Since then, that neoliberalization, basically, we all pretty well know the economic philosophy behind it is called as libertarianism. Liberalism, in fact, now of Adam Smith has been changed to libertarianism by, in fact, now Herbert Spencer and then William Sumner, which is called as, in fact, now social Darwinism. Here, libertarianism demanded that the sovereign state shall not keep any kind of a tabs on the corporate and a capitalist. They do not even, they are not allowed to even tax them, actually. They said if a capitalist, in fact, earns so much, they become a lot of charitable persons. They give their own charity called as corporate social responsibility, CSR. So this is a kind of an economic philosophy which came in, and it was brought in fact, now by the what do you call so-called developed countries, and India has very easily taken. Not every Indian was in favor of that. Those entrenched castes who were in power in governance. That was very, very, in fact, no, like congenial for them. So what has happened, in fact, no, you see that all the public good has now become private, cheap private property. But at the same time, sir, in the countries which they brought, actually, they now have reverted. We don't see globalization or the pranks of global village, or in fact, no, blurring away of what do you call, say, boundaries. The whole world becomes one village, and there are no taxes, no things. All those sorts of things of globalization are not there in those countries who have initiated this experiment of globalization. For the last 13, 14, or 15 years, we have a process called as a neo-globalization or post-globalization period, where this what do you call, in fact, no, shouting of the roof called as no boundaries. Now the countries, in fact, now are making their own boundaries. America is for America. America is building walls because they want to take their own interest, actually. They say that our interest is in here. See, you have the, in fact, no, the European countries, they all come in to form the European Union. They have, in fact, no, abolished the kind of visas. They have trade, in fact, everything, in fact, no, they start their own currency. And what is the position right now? They stopped that in the post-globalization period. They realized that it's not going to happen. Britics, we have seen. Germany is closing its own borders. France is having its own policies, actually. You have Australia closing its visas. New Zealand is not allowing others, in fact, to come in. So they are closing them now. The open policy or liberal, no, it's nothing there. But India has been continuing this policy because the entrenched castes, basically, they have seen an opportunity over here to undo what the democratic constitution wants to do. They want to bring back to the situation. But how it's happening and why it's happening? You asked a very good thing, sir. Why it is happening? Why it is happening is, in fact, no, if you understand the warnings of Dr. Ambedkar, probably we will understand that the conditions which are contingent to have a successful democracy have not been met. And Ambedkar himself said, a democracy does not work on its own. A democracy must be worked upon by the people who make it, actually. And it happens only through checks and balances. So that means the citizens of this country, at least educated sections of the people of this country, should make a situation of checks and balances and those who know what's happening. And then they should take the responsibility to see that democracy is preserved and then worked upon for their benefit. But unfortunately, India is an immature democracy where citizens, in fact, do not know what their responsibilities are. They are still governed, in fact, by those old, archaic, caste-based notions, actually. The politics in this country are not democratic. That is the reason why today's rating of India is called as India is a flawed democracy. And India today got, in fact, a situation called as elected despots. Authoritarian populists are controlling the affairs of the state. And that is the reason why, in fact, a true democracy doesn't work. They have been, in fact, conveniently manipulating this resources of this country, draining from the people, draining the resources of the people, draining, in fact, the labor of the people without any kind of scruples. So therefore, unless we stop this, unless people, in fact, become responsible towards their own democracy, I don't think so, in fact, any change would happen. Probably people become much poor, will become much poor. The rich, in fact, now are becoming ultra rich. And as Ambedkar also postulated, in a caste-based society, a revolution doesn't take place. But I'm like, in a sense, people like us are very, very hopeful that, in fact, now people get dissatisfied someday and then see that a perfect democracy works. So that's the only hope. Otherwise, there is no way out, actually. We will have to fight it out. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, sir. I agree for your opinion. And hello, are you able to hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am following it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. A good explanation I got, and thanks for your explanation patiently. And being as a economic scientist, I won't agree with the economist itself. No, because see, without a anthropological and sociological understanding, economist is nothing. So here, so particularly in the Indian context, economist alone can't get any kind of success. He cannot implement any policy. He cannot frame even any successful policy for development. That I believe that being as economist, there is a no internal fight also. One I believe because Ambedkar framed a political economy framework because by the background of anthropology, history, and political science, and so many other subjects also he read, and on the basis of that he made a political economic framework. But now, by specializations of economics, neoliberal and so many theories are coming and are ruling the world economy, and it's becoming narrow. And I think economist is responsible for the crisis today. I believe that actually.
I really appreciate.
I agree.
I really appreciate.
Honestly, I agree.
I really appreciate the frankness. Despite being an economist, you're forthright, in fact, now in talking about the limitations. And I'm very fortunate having met you.
Because economist's mind is becoming narrow, and he is not able to see. He became a mission to talks about the statistics.
Yes.
The very unfortunate thing. Sorry for this.
Yes, that's right. Sir, may I know where you teach, sir?
Statement. So I'm sorry. Of course, efficient ideas also may evolve by this analysis, but holistic development approach has failed by the this approach. Thank you very much.
Sir, may I know where you teach?
Sir, University of Hyderabad. We met 2 times or 3 times. We conducted program in University of Hyderabad. And 4 years before Corona, 4 years back, I became a member of our community.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So I had good lectures from you. Yeah.
So nice reuniting.
Professor V. Krishna and myself.
Yes. I know. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Is there any other question from our participants regarding this presentation? These lectures are intentionally presented with the sole motive of building the nation, being Indians, feeling responsible to build the nation, and trying to learn from the history, and trying to learn from anthropology, trying to learn from the astounding scholarship of Dr. B R.Ambedkar. So we are very fortunate to have Professor Satyapal sir among us and delivering these his well-learned lectures. And dear participants, this is the right time for you to pose questions and to explore more insights. There is some chat box. Okay. So, yeah, is there any question from your side? Yeah, okay. Then, yeah, this lecture gives a lot of awareness about how the caste system is imposing the poverty and looting the liberty of the people to choose their own occupations. But anyway, so how to overcome this kind of phenomenon? How to build the people and build the stronger families, stronger responsible citizens, and who will fight for their dignity, freedom, and autonomy, so that at the individual level, at the family level, at the community level, at the broader societal level, how this awareness will really facilitate to generate momentum and at the individual level, at the collective level, to overthrow this unintended imposition or sanctions of the caste system on the lower strata of the people of the caste. So, yeah, these are the important questions. I seek a response from Professor Satyapal sir.
Dr. P.D.Satya. So you're talking about, in fact, now like the kind of remedies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I brought the remedy, in fact, now, which was suggested by Dr. Ambedkar. Ambedkar's remedy for agrarian problem is, in fact, now like collective farming, 1, industrialization, 2, and that too, in fact, now the third remedy which he brought out is state socialism, where within the parliamentary democracy, we have state socialism experiments, in fact, now without democracy. But Ambedkar wanted a democracy, a parliamentary democracy, but the state being a socialist state. So these are the three, in fact, no, like in a sense, possible options that possible ways out that Ambedkar proposed for the twin enemies that this country, this society faces, the Brahminism and capitalism. So the situation, in fact, no, is that neither of these alternatives or any of the alternative that Ambedkar has very logically has shown as the answer to end this particular thing have not been put on to practice. So therefore, the only thing that, in fact, now the people of this country, citizens of this country, can do is to see come united and then take the responsibility to see the democracy works as it should. And they can take up cues from, in fact, Dr. Ambedkar with regard to the remedies of the caste-based mode of production. That's the only way out. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, dear participants, if there is any other question from your side, otherwise we are going to close the session. Thank you for your active participation, paying attention to the lecture. And we look forward for future lectures. Every alternative Wednesday, we are conducting these lectures. So, and if you are not registered for this course, you can register. The link is there on the website, and also I will inform you. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.